Hey everybody, this is Chris from Console Customs. I am coming to you today to show you another installation, this time for our version 3 of our Easy Mapper mod. So this is a mod for just adding buttons to your PS4 controller. Real easy installation, and just allows you to add fixed buttons of any type. Really, any of these buttons you can see on here, R1, L1, square, triangle, circle, X, the PS button, and D-pad directions, also R2 and L2. So this mod is a new version that is specifically for the new controllers, the new, if you want to call them Pro controllers, version 2 controllers. They are the ones with the lighted touchpad like this. So this mod is only for this controller. If you have an older controller, then you need our version 2 mod. The version 2 works for everything else. So if you ordered this mod, you may have ordered it along with some buttons. If you order with buttons, you're also going to get wire. We offer 2 different size buttons. This is a larger 6mm button and a smaller 3mm button. This one's good for adding paddles if that's what you're looking to do. So those are available on our website with the kit. You could also have ordered a screwdriver if you have a cell phone repair kit or something. You probably already have one of these. This is a Phillips PH00 size screwdriver. So if you need one, you can order it. If you already have one, great. So to install this, first thing we need to do is open our controller. I have already removed the screws from this controller just to make things a little bit faster. The shell is still held together by a lot of clips, so as you're pulling it apart, you're going to hear some popping. And you need to be careful because there is a cable that goes between the front and back halves of the shell. So we just need to pull that out from the controller side. It's just a pressure fit connection in there. And we'll set that off to the side right now. So we have to remove the circuit board to install this mod, but first we need to remove the battery as well. So the battery kind of sits in this little tray which has 2 clips holding it in, one here and one here, so you can just use a screwdriver or something else to pop those loose. And we just need to unplug our battery. So you could use a little pair of side cutters just to grab that, or if you're careful, just grab it with your fingernails and wiggle it out. You really don't want to pull by the wires because you might pull the wires out of the plug. Alright, so there is our circuit board. And to get that out, we need to remove this screw, which is again a Phillips PH00 size screw. And we need to also remove this ribbon cable, which goes to the touchpad. So you should be able to just pull that out with your fingers. And lastly, there's also 2 clips holding this board in. Just again, kind of up at the top of the boards on either side here. So we'll just pop those guys. That one already came out. And we can pull the board out and flip it over. So this mod works similar to our previous versions. Basically, it's just sitting right here to line up with all these pads, and it's basically sandwiches in between the flex from the controller, which looks very similar to our own, and these black contact pads on the board. So the easiest way, this one doesn't require any soldering on this side, so you can really just kind of take it and set it over these little pegs that are already here from the other mod, or from the other ribbon cable, and just put the board back in place. So now that we have that, what we can do is just, this mod is going to flip over onto the back of the controller like this. We'll need to put a little hot glue there, but first let's put the ribbon cable back in and put the screw back in the board just to hold it in place. So as I said, we need to put some hot glue to hold this in place. I would suggest putting it around this area. We want to put it in an area where there is no little resistors or capacitors or anything, because if we need to remove it later, it's a good possibility you might rip off one of those capacitors with the hot glue if you're trying to pull the board back out. So we'll just take and put a little dab of hot glue here. Flip our board over, hold it for just a second. Okay, now we are good to go. So now we need to work on installing our buttons. Really with this mod, since it's not programmable, we have a separate version that's programmable. You're basically just soldering wires to one of these locations for the button you want to map, and then another one to the ground. The exception is the R1 and L1. These are specific. If you're using L1, you need to use these two pads, and R1, those two pads. So we'll get to installing our buttons. So to install buttons, that's going to depend what size buttons you purchased. So again, we've got two sizes that we offer. The smaller one, you know, this is good for something you want to keep small, out of the way, just a small button in there. Really good for adding paddles. So if you want to add paddles, these small ones are what I recommend. These are only a 3mm diameter button, and the bigger one's a 6mm diameter button. It's much bigger, so if you don't want to install paddles, this one might be the way to go. The only thing with these larger buttons is they really only fit on the inside grip area here. The smaller ones you can put in some other areas, like sometimes we'll put it right on the edge of this sticker or up back here, but the big ones really don't fit there. They'll fit here only in the grip area. So that's the only difference. If you're going with a small button, what you are going to need is either a 1/8 inch or 9/64 inch drill bit. If you're somewhere outside the US, that's going to be like a 3.5mm drill bit. If you are going with a bigger button, then you need a bigger drill bit, obviously, and that's going to be like a 17/64. Not as odd as it sounds, but that's what you need. You can also go with a 9/32 inch drill bit, but that's a little bit bigger, and it's going to leave a little bigger gap around the edges of the button. And again, if outside the US, you're going to want a 7mm drill bit. So today I'm going to install the bigger buttons. Personally, the ones that I like to use, just right inside the grip. Don't need any paddles or anything like that. It's a nice button. So that is where we're going with. So really, to start, again, you need your drill, which I can't find my small drill, so today we're going with this big old DeWalt drill. And there's some things in here you can use to kind of figure out where you might want to put your button to help get it in the same spot on either side. So there's like a little crease in here from the mold process, you know, to help you figure out where you want to put it. So we kind of go just to the side of that and down a little bit. Alright, so there's one button hole. This one actually came out pretty clean, but you might want to take an even larger drill bit, or something like a countersink, or just like a little deburring tool, just to, you know, remove any rough edges that you have right there. And we'll do the same thing on the other side. Okay, so I went ahead and drilled my hole on the other side just so I could get it lined up so they're both the same, in the same spot. So got both of those drilled, and if we just take this button, just so you can kind of see how this one is, it doesn't stick out very far at all. It's just a hair past the shell, but it doesn't push in much either to click, so it sits real flush, and it's just a real nice button to easily push. Stays out of the way so you're not accidentally hitting it. Personally, I think they work out really well. So what we need to do to install these is basically hot glue them in place, and to do that, first we're going to remove one set of the legs. So you can see there's two legs on either side of this. We only need one set, so we'll just bend those and break them off just to so we only have the ones that we need. And I need to grab my other button. And we'll do the same thing with this one. So if you're using the smaller buttons, it's the same way. See, there's one edge here, there's no legs on that, and there's legs directly across from each other. So if you're using a small one, you would just do the same thing. Remove one pair of those, so you end up with just two legs right next to each other. And those are the ones you want to use. Alright, so when we install these, it usually works best to put the legs towards the inside of the controller. We'll end up folding them down, but I like to just hold it there, make sure that you've got good action on the button, and start some hot glue. Usually I just put a little dab on one side and hold it there. Make sure we've still got good action on the button. Until that dries, it takes a few seconds. And once we have that dry and everything looks good, I'll put hot glue on the other edges of the button. So I'll just speed this up and come back in a second with that all glued in. Okay, so I have both buttons hot glued in place. Just quick up close on those, you kind of see it just get around each button. You want to get pretty good amount around there, just to make sure it's not going to move. With these big buttons, you really want to try and avoid getting too much on top of the button, just because in the controller they're really going to sit right next to the rumble motor here, and as you can see, there's not a whole lot of room. It's actually about a perfect space in there for the button to fit. So if we get much more on top of that, you're pushing against the housing for the rumble motor. So try to keep it off the top. But it's also good because that housing of the rumble motor will just help hold the button in place. So now what we'll do is just bend the legs of this button down. Kind of want them flat so they're not sticking into anything on both sides. And we'll solder our wires to those. So I've already cut some wires. You want these about 5 inches long. That's about 13 centimeters, 130 millimeters. You don't really need much longer than that. You could probably get away with shorter too, but we give plenty enough wire, and normally, depending on how many buttons you order, you'll either get a minimum of 2 colors of wire, but if you order more than 1 button, we'll normally send 4 colors of wire, just to help you out there. So we just need to solder these on. We'll do the button side first. Usually a little easier going that direction. So again, I'm just going to tin these. And that makes it easier. So we don't have to hold 3 different things at once. Okay, so we have our wire soldered on there. And then what I normally like to do is just put a little hot glue right over top of those, so we make sure they're not going anywhere, not going to break from moving around inside the controller or anything like that. Kind of push them down with the hot glue gun as well. So now we have our 2 sets of wires for our buttons. Okay, so we have our buttons installed. And now all we need to do is connect them to our mod. So I'm going to go ahead and connect up the X and circle buttons. So we're going to use the circle pad right here and the X right there, and then just 2 of these ground pads right here. So just like before, I'm going to tin these up. Give you a quick shot of that. So now you can see those 4 pads that we're going to use, and we'll go ahead and solder our wires for the button. So for each button we need just 1 wire going to the button connection and the other going to the ground. So there are our 4 wires. And then what I like to do is put a little bit of hot glue on the wires. We're going to put it down a little lower on the wires. We don't want to put it right over the connections. If you ever want to change those later, it would be a real pain with all the hot glue over top of it. So we just want to put a little hot glue down here just to help hold those wires, so if we're have any pulling on the wires or anything, it's pulling on the hot glue and not on the actual solder connection. So just like that, we've got some hot glue. So now if we pull those wires, it's not pulling on our solder connection. Basically all we need to do now is just put this mod back together, and we will have new buttons on the back of our controller that act as circle and X. So we can just take our battery and plug this in. Just clip that into place. And then we will need to reconnect our ribbon cable for the back half of the shell here. If you forget this cable, you won't be able to charge and the LED won't work. So if you plug it in, you don't get any lights. It could be that this cable is not connected. And the blue side of this goes towards the center of the controller, and we have the side with the leads on it goes towards the outside. And actually, I already automatically turned on our controller. We'll shut it off real quick, and then we just need to make sure these wires are out of the way. So we'll tuck those up in there. Make sure our light bar goes down in the slot. It may close a little tight, just depending how much glue you have around these buttons and where you put your buttons. So if it's closing too tight, you might want to make sure you don't have hot glue or something in the way. But since these are the larger buttons, they fit right snug against the robo motor, so sometimes that's a little tight putting those together right there. But now we have our new buttons that will function as the X and circle buttons. So we do also have a programmable version of this. This is our Reflex V3. So with this one you can add up to 4 buttons, and those you can reprogram on the fly. So with this one, if you wanted to change the buttons, you'd have to open the controller back up and resolder the connections. But with the programmable version, you can just use a button combination to change the button assignment without having to reopen the controller. We offer these on our website, on eBay, and soon to be on Amazon as well. You can order them with or without buttons. We also offer them wholesale, so if you're looking to add these to your controllers, if you're a business, just shoot us an email. We can get you some information about our wholesale pricing. Thanks for watching.